Prison teaches you things you didn't think you'd ever need to learn. How to tell when a man is about to swing before he even curls his fist. How to hide your soap so it doesn't get stolen. How to keep your back to the wall in the cafeteria. And how to live with hunger. Not just for food, but for everything else the world takes from you once you're caged: comfort, warmth, touch, kindness. The first time I met Jonah, it was because of hunger. It was my first week inside, and I was still stupid enough to think the system would feed me like a human being. Dinner was a piece of meat so thin I could see the metal tray through it, watery beans, and one small, dry roll of bread. I ate the bread first, too fast, trying to fill the emptiness gnawing at my stomach. When the tray was bare, I sat staring, heart pounding with shame. My stomach growled loud enough for the men at the next table to laugh. And then a hand slid across the table. Calloused, steady, holding a second roll of bread. "Here," Jonah said. I looked up. He was taller than me, older maybe by a few years. His hair was buzzed close, his eyes the color of midnight. There was something in his face, hard lines carved by time, but also softness, a quiet strength. "I can't take that," I whispered. "You can," he said simply. "And you will. Eat." So I did. I took his bread, and for the first time since I'd been locked up, I didn't feel like just a number. I felt seen. From that day on, Jonah was everywhere. He didn't hover. He didn't crowd me. He just appeared when I needed him most. When a guy twice my size tried to shoulder me out of line, Jonah stepped up, his stare enough to make the guy back down. When I couldn't sleep at night, turning over the mistakes that landed me here, Jonah's voice would come low through the dark. "Close your eyes. Tomorrow'll come whether you're ready or not. Rest." And I did. Because something about his voice made me believe I'd be safe long enough to close my eyes. But it was the bread that stuck with me. That small, stupid roll of bread. It meant more than meals, more than protection. It was the first time in years someone had given me something without asking for anything in return. Still, I fought it. I told myself it was gratitude, nothing more. That the flutter in my chest when Jonah looked at me too long was just relief, not longing. That the way my body leaned toward him when he brushed past me was just instinct, not desire. Because desire was dangerous in here. More dangerous than fists or knives. One night, I snapped at him. We were sitting on the bunks, silence stretching between us. He had given me his extra bread again, and I shoved it back. "Stop it," I hissed. "Stop giving me your food. Stop watching my back. Stop looking at me like that." His jaw tightened, but his voice was calm. "Like what?" "Like I matter," I whispered, more broken than angry. Jonah leaned forward, his eyes burning into mine. "Because you do." The words shattered something inside me. I turned away before he could see the tears threatening to spill. It happened slowly, like a storm rolling and you can't stop. A brush of his shoulder against mine in the line. His knee bumping mine under the table. The quiet way he'd place his palm on my back when he guided me through a crowded hallway. And then one night after lights out, I couldn't take it anymore. I whispered his name. "Jonah." He shifted on the top bunk. "Yeah." My throat tightened. The words barely escaped. I can't do this alone." Silence. Then the creak of metal as he climbed down. In the dark, his hand found mine warm, steady. "You're not alone," he murmured. The touch of his fingers laced with mine was more electric than any fight, any kiss I'd ever known. My whole body shook with it. And when his lips finally brushed mine, soft, tentative, I thought my heart might break from how much I wanted him. From then on, we were careful. But we were ours. Stolen kisses under blankets. His hands squeezing mine in the chow line when no one was looking. Whispered conversations about life outside, about what we wanted, about who we were when the walls weren't closing in. "I used to think I'd never love again," Jonah confessed one night. "Not in here. Not after everything. And now?" I asked, breathless. He cupped my face, his thumb tracing my jaw. "Now I know love shows up when you least expect it. And when it does, you don't let go." Months passed. Rumors swirled. People noticed the way Jonah always sat with me, the way he guarded me like a shadow. But he never wavered. Never flinched. One evening, after a long day of silence, he turned to me in the cell. "Eli, I don't just want to protect you. I want you. All of you. For as long as I'm breathing." My chest tightened. "Jonah." He pulled out a scrap of paper, folded neatly, edges worn from being handled too often. It was a form, a request for a prison marriage license. "I don't have much to give," he said quietly. "But I can give you this. My name. My promise. My forever." Tears blurred my vision. I thought of that first night, of his bread on my tray, of how something so small had grown into something this vast. "Yes," I whispered, voice shaking. "Yes, Jonah. Yes." Years later, when the gates finally opened for me, Jonah was waiting. Not with bread this time, but with a ring. And when I slipped it onto his finger, I realized the truth. He'd given me his last bread when I was starving. And in the end, he gave me his last name when I was ready to live. Because in a world built to break us, we found a way to make each other whole. We filled out the paperwork in secret, our heads bent close together at the metal table like conspirators. A guard walked past, his boots echoing off the concrete. We kept our eyes down until he was gone. When Jonah finally slid the form back into his shirt pocket, his hands were shaking. After that night, everything felt sharper. Every touch. Every look. Even the fights in the yard seemed to fade into the background. We were building something brick by brick, in a place made to tear things apart. But prison doesn't care about promises. It doesn't care about papers. 2 weeks before the license could be approved, Jonah was moved. They called it a transfer. No warning. No goodbyes. Just a number called at morning count, and a guard telling him to pack his things. He pressed the folded form into my palm before he left, eyes steady but glassy. "Don't forget me," he murmured. I tried to smile. I couldn't if I tried. The cell felt colder without him. Nights were longer. Bread was harder to swallow. But I kept the form hidden under my mattress, the paper softening under my fingers as I unfolded it every night and ran my thumb over his signature. Months later, my release date came. No one met me at the gates. Not right away. I thought maybe I'd been foolish to believe. Then a car pulled up. Jonah stepped out, bigger somehow, freer, his hair a little longer, his smile a little shy. In his hand was a small black box. We didn't need words. He slipped the ring on my finger, right there on the cracked pavement outside the prison. I kissed him, tasting salt and sun and the promise of a life not stolen but rebuilt. Prison had taught me hunger. Jonah had taught me what it meant to be fed. And when we drove away, hands clasped on the gearshift between us, I realized it didn't matter how we'd met. We'd survived. We'd loved. We were free. We pulled up outside the small apartment Jonah had rented, a place that smelled faintly of paint and sunlight, so different from the cold, iron-scented halls we'd left behind. The keys trembled in his hand, but when he opened the door, the nervousness melted away. For a moment, we just stood there, taking each other in, the freedom in his posture, the way his eyes softened as they met mine, the subtle curve of his lips holding back a smile. It was quiet, but the air between us buzzed, charged with everything we hadn't been able to say in prison. I stepped closer, and he didn't pull back. Instead, he pressed his forehead to mine, and I felt the weight of years of hunger, of longing shift and settle into something real, something ours. "Finally," he whispered. And then, almost instinctively, our mouths found each other. The kiss was slow, exploring, tasting, different from the urgent, desperate touches in the cell. This was intimacy. This was permission. This was the first moment of true freedom, and we were devouring it. Hands roamed, lingering over familiar curves and new planes, skin meeting skin for the first time outside the prison walls. Clothes came off with deliberate care, every touch a conversation, every shiver a confession. Jonah's lips trailed down my neck, over my chest, and I gasped at the warmth of him, at the sensation of being wanted fully, without fear. When we finally joined, it was electric, years of longing, restraint, and survival exploding into movement and breath. Every thrust, every groan, every shudder was a declaration. We had survived. We had found each other. We had freedom. Later, tangled together in the soft glow of lamplight, Jonah traced the scars on my arms, fingers gentle, reverent. I cupped his face, memorizing him, every line, every shadow. "I never want to let go," I whispered. "You don't have to," he said, voice low, hoarse from need and emotion. "Not ever." In that moment, hunger became warmth, hunger became love, hunger became home.